In this current situation that we find ourselves in which people like me come on the screen and have a good old moan about what's going on and try to warn people about the so-called truth that's happening, and talking about perhaps not quite so benevolent governments and councils that don't seem to listen to the people, it clearly starts to rattle the platforms that we're on, and when you start exposing things, they don't like it too much. And maybe this is the universe now telling me, for example, because I've been demonetized and I've been chucked off the platform several times, that this is not the best approach. And one has to perhaps persuade people not so much that, oh, look at all this bad stuff that's over there, but actually turn it on its head 180 degrees and focus on the things that we actually want, and try and persuade people that perhaps they should be thinking about what do they desire, what would make their life better, instead of moaning about, oh, look, this is a directive that's being pushed down from the top. Maybe we should be talking more about what the grassroots want to do, the people in the town. And it makes me think of Biggleswick. Now, I don't know whether you remember, I was talking to you last year and perhaps earlier this year about that wonderful town, Biggleswick, which is there nestling between the two counties of Bedfordshire and Greatham. And these two counties, in the middle, you see and find the town of Biggleswick. Now, of course, this is an allegory. It isn't a real town, as I had people saying, oh, Richard, how do I contact those good people of Biggleswick? Because the good people of Biggleswick once said, do you know what? The council was hell-bent in putting in 5G towers, 20-mile-an-hour speed areas, lots of surveillance and 15-minute cities and net zero policies. And the people of Biggleswick were sort of scratching their heads and going, well, who asked for this? We didn't ask for it. Nobody here's asked for it. They consulted one another and they said, actually, we don't want this. And the council said, well, that's all very well, but you're going to have it anyway. But the people of Biggleswick, the townspeople, the people who lived there, turned round and they said, actually, who are you to tell us what we, who live in the town, want? And they decided they would oust that council by simply not paying them, and the council taxes that would normally go towards the government and all their projects, they decided to fund their own council. So they had their own elections, and local people from all walks of life were elected, and the money went to pay towards those amenities that they needed. And everybody was involved in the town halls, on the beaches, in the playgrounds, in the town centre, in all meeting rooms and areas, reading rooms, the library, wherever, where people could gather together and discuss what they wanted for their town, leaving the old council on the side scratching their head going, but nobody's listening to us anymore. And nobody's listening to you because they didn't want what you offered. And the new council, the vibrant People's Council, were coming up with plentiful suggestions. They were ousting away the ugly buildings that they no longer wanted. They didn't want their agricultural land being built on by new builds that were basically just small boxes, ticky-tacky boxes with mean windows and no gardens. They wanted people to live a little more opulently. They wanted people to live and thrive in the environment. They pushed back against all the corporations that were coming in, and they were much more in favour of the small family-run businesses. They wanted to see the butcher, the baker, the haberdashery, the ironmonger, the candlestick maker back onto the high street, rather than these large, big corporations that would give them the illusion of choice and actually no choice whatsoever. And so the people of Biggleswick all came together and decided, actually, what is it that we want rather than what they are telling us? And in many ways, I think that's what we should all be doing. And this is just my opinion, of course, but taking back responsibility for what we want, living a life in which we're laughing, thriving, joking, smiling, supporting those family-run businesses, the businesses that are being snapped up by the by the big corporations who are dead entities, who are trying to sort of tell us how we should live and turn us into numbers. We've seen that with the utility companies, where you're trying to ring up and say, hello, I want to complain or make a point about my bill for something, electricity or gas or whatever it may be. And oh yes, your call is very important to us and we'll put you on hold. You're number 372 in the call. The people of Biggleswick wouldn't put up with that. They would set up their own utility companies, small family-run little companies that would supply the internet, would supply the gas and supply the power, instead of these large companies in which we all become just a number, a drone on a system. Nobody wants that in Biggleswick. And so they pushed back against all of that and said, how can we do this? How can we run a much more successful situation in which we're not just a number on a list, that we mean something? So now with the new banks in Biggleswick, you get to see your bank manager. The bank manager knows you. He understands your business. You go to see your local doctor and your medical profession and your health and well-being person, and they know your family. They know your situation. They're small. They're not wait here and what's your name and it's a different locum each week. They decided that they didn't want this sort of, I'm going to be just a number, just a drone, just a neuter, just nobody in particular. People wanted to be recognised. They knew their neighbours. They got on with their neighbours. They started to express. And the youth were coaxed out from their bedrooms behind the screens and their phones, like blinking moles into the sunshine. They crept out because there were youth centres being put up. There were games and fun things for young people to do, adventure playgrounds and all sorts of things, apprenticeship schemes in Biggleswick. Yes, the people were not just happy to sit on their laurels and wait for government or the council to offer them services. The people of Biggleswick said, no, what can we do? What can we as a community do to help ourselves and push back those anti-human policies that a government running the so-called country, the UK corporation, had anything to do with? They didn't want anything to do with that. They wanted a cohesive and fun-loving society. So they took back their control and decided that they were the people who lived there, they were the people who were supporting one another, they were the people who would make the decisions. And perhaps that's what we should do. What do we want from this country? What do we want from our towns and our villages? What do we want from our agriculture? How do we really want to live our lives? What would make us happy and smiley? Perhaps less of the surveillance, perhaps not these 5G worrying towers of technology, perhaps not the removal of the trees in the avenues and alleyways that are sort of disappearing. Perhaps they want to plant more and they want to have local seasonal produce. They want to perhaps support their farmers. Perhaps they want to have more allotments. Perhaps they want to grow more and be encouraged to, and not have to register their chickens and be worried about certain plagues and all this sort of nonsense that's going on. Perhaps they are the ones who want to be in control and they want to look after one another and check that Mrs. Miggs is okay and Mr. Johnson across the road is fine and old Harold is not limping too much, and they want to look after one another. Perhaps that's what the people of a land really want, rather than sitting back and going, oh, I have to write to the council to get permission. Perhaps the people of Biggleswick would laugh at those and say, oh, why are you waiting for permission? Permission from whom? You are the ones who are sovereign. You get together in your community and do things for yourselves and not wait for others. Don't give them the power. That, I think, is possibly a way that we can make people be more aware of what they want. Yes, oh, I think actually I'm now empowered. I would love to do that. Let's get some people. Instead of looking and saying, oh, are we allowed to do it? Do it. Do it. Let's get up off our backsides and get on and create a much better world. The world that we want, not the one that they want us to have.